Right.
I think that's a great comment, and I will say I actually think it makes it easier when you know an expansion that's going to occur, and you can think more deliberately about how to plan that. If you know essentially what you're talking about is building a bigger system in phases. That's actually a little bit easier than trying to address the unknowns. So we'll definitely make sure we capture that and have a clear understanding of how those different phases work and what ripple effect that has on these agreements as they go forward.
Thank you.
Okay, very good. Thank you, Denny, for that question. Anybody else on the board have anything that they would like to speak to? Okay. I don't know what Cable in Houston, you guys are welcome to sit in and listen as we move forward here, obviously, but I think I'm going to move on then, and we're going to be talking with Peter Olson from Keller and Associates about our operation and maintenance cost overview. If everybody's ready to move on, or do we have something left?
The risk of putting some the attorneys on the spot.
Oh, good. Put them in the hot seat.
Have a sense of maybe how they might answer these questions already.
I'm
And
barely
so I'm sort of
hearing
looking
Laura.
at,
You're breaking up, Laura.
Yeah, I was going to ask if the chair could repeat the question because it's pretty clear over there. There you go.
yeah. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Much better.
Yeah. Okay. So I just wonder if there are board members that maybe don't have questions, but have maybe some thoughts already on answers to some of these questions, and whether like the ownership question, for example, the operation and maintenance question, and if it wouldn't be just helpful to the attorneys to get sort of a straw poll, if you will, if folks are thinking about how they might want to set this up already. Now, we could save that, Chair, for a future conversation, but I think the more information we can give these folks, the better to sort of chew on and maybe give you some off-the-cuff responses. So I'm looking at Ron Evans, Councillor Evans, Commissioner Evans. I know you've put a lot of thought into these questions. I don't think you have questions for the attorneys. I do think you might have some thoughts that you want to share with them already. And I think others on the board have over the last 3 or 4 months echoed the same thing. So I just wanted to put you on the spot and say, did you have thoughts that you wanted to sort of direct?
It's Mayor Evans.
They started.
Yes, this afternoon. So the question was, do we have the attorneys under contract? And the answer is that this morning, Cable Houston sent over an agreement, which is in front of your chair, and the chair can sign, has the authority through your IGAs to sign. Does not need, and you cannot take an action here anyway because you're a work session, but the chair also doesn't need authority to sign that contract because you've already given the authority to do that in a previous meeting. So does anybody else want to take me up on my?
Yes.
No,
Yes.
I will.
We've all talked about Mill City owning the facility and contracting the services to Gates. So Mill City would own it, and then they would have a contract, or however your attorneys write it up, to supply the services to Gates. Detroit and Idana, the upper part, as Denny mentioned, we don't even know if it's going to happen. So we're trying to understand where we come in with the NSSA and this project with Mill City and Gates.
I think I'd like to add to that then, Ken, the little history with it is, in the very beginning, we all signed on as one sewer authority, 2 representatives from all 4 communities, with everybody, each community have equal voting powers within the sewer authority, thinking that it was going to be pretty much a simultaneous project for both sewer systems to develop. However, things evolved where we were thrown a bunch of money through ARPA funds, and but the Upper Canyon, the Detroit Idana one, is going to be a little bit more difficult to get moving. So a bunch of moving parts are already going for the Mill City Gates portion of it. And I think one of the comments that Denny was alluding to also was that is it reasonable that Detroit and Idana have voting powers over what Mill City and Gates are doing and things like that? Because in the beginning, the sewer authority was designed to own everything. And now it's talking more like Mill City might become the owner of the lower system and contracting with Gates. So we've got, that's what I mean. Everything's still evolving and we don't know yet. And quite honestly, we're still possibly thinking about contracting with Marion County in some of that too, where Mill City has ownership and Marion County helps us operate. So we still don't know where all that's going. So we got lots of things still to talk about, and I want to say lots of evolution to go through yet.
I agree.
So we don't have a lot nailed down completely. That's where I'm at.
Yeah, what the way we got to this was the fact that, like Tim said, we started off with 4 cities, and now what we're actually looking at is it's 2 cities putting together a system, and most of it is in Mill City. Gates is a very small appenditure to it. Gates doesn't have the ability to own anything. Actually, we have no money. I'm from Gates, so the idea was, it seemed one solution that seemed like it might be possible was for Mill City to own the assets, starting off with the Gates Mill City part of it, and operate the system. And Gates would just become a part of that system, as the users would be users of the system, just as Mill City users were. That's an idea. What we'd like to do actually is, if we can come up with some solution where we can get something fairly quickly, an organization or a structure that we can receive ownership from Marion County when they get ready to it. That seems to be, that could be a feature in them funding the rest of the system, actually. So if we could come up with some solution where we could get a system or something in place using Mill City's current assets, where they would take it over and start running it. Looking down the future, as things develop in the future, we could evolve that into maybe a 4-system solution or whatever down the road. But initially, to get it up and running, with Mill City being the owner operator of the Gates Mill City infrastructure.
So I guess one question I might have or comment is, does Mill City actually own the pipes in the ground for Gates, and then we just work with Gates on a sewer fee, just like we have for Mill City residents? Or does the city of Gates own that infrastructure, that collection system? We then charge Gates for the operation and maintenance, but then Gates would have to do their own billing for sewer services to the community, things like that. So we have lots of questions, and we don't know what would be the best way to do it. I know that other communities have done that just down the road from us. Staten and Sublimity work cooperatively with each other on the sewer and stuff, and sometimes I understand it's not so cooperatively. So we want to do what we can to eliminate any, obviously, headaches and heartaches over the whole thing. So some guidance as well is what I'm thinking we need, not just not just what we think we need, but somebody to also make suggestions to us as well.
Keep it simple.
So keep it simple. We like to keep things simple up here. Anybody else have anything? Laura? What's that?
When would you like them back?
When would we like them back? I would like to see some suggestions of some items that we need to work on and have discussion points on so that we can give them some direction on how to help us.
By next meeting.
So the sooner the better.
You mean the homework, or do you mean them coming to our meeting? I think we probably should we get homework done before we ask them to come to the meeting without having
No,
intelligently talk.
they can make their suggestions to us and send them to us by the next meeting, and we can start our discussions.
We can start discussing items then, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Congratulations, Ron. It's in order. Congratulations.
Does everybody know why?
Ron just got promoted.
No. He's the new
Ron
mayor.
got promoted of Gates, yes.
Congratulations, Ron.
Thank you.
Okay. Do we have anything else for our attorneys? If not, then we should move forward with tonight's meeting. Move on to Mr.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank
Miss-
you.
Oh, we got questions? Question?
It would be really good.
Can't hear him. Can't hear him.
Tommy and Clark, could you actually stay on for just a little bit longer? We might want to hear some of the stuff that the Marion County has an update for us.
I can stay on for a minute. I know Tommy can stay longer, but yeah, I'd like to hear.
Okay, then I would like to move item C forward, if you don't mind, Peter. Okay, then we will have our county update from Public Works Director of Marion County, Brian Nicholas, is here with us.
You want me to put you on camera?
Yeah, the owl has one.
Okay,
Do we have the slides?
so how are we gonna do this? Here we go.
Not that one.
Not that one, I don't know.
Is it in what you sent when I opened? Okay, now I gotta figure out how to do this. Please be patient. So if I do this right, I should say share screen. Host participant has disabled sharing. You're just not a nice person tonight, Laura. Oh my gosh. And I hope this works right. Share. Oh, okay, so I'm gonna make you guys go away, sorry. And then,
Meanie.
is this right?
Yep.
Okay, then it's all yours, sir.
All right, let's,
And it's a weird computer, so I apologize up front.
that's okay. Let's see, trying to make this so everybody can see the whole slide. Janet, do you know how to
Nah, I
just
don't, but we'll
scale it down just a little bit so we can
Let's
see the
see
whole
what
slide?
we can break. Well, I downloaded it, so this should go away. Why isn't this going? Oh, because I'm. So where's my full screen setting?
Okay.
I'm sorry.
No, it's okay.
Yeah.
All right, we'll just make this work. All right. For those who don't know me, I'm Brian Nicholas, Marion County Public Works Director. And I just asked for a few minutes on tonight's agenda because the board is now starting to transition into a new discussion. Well, I'd say continuation of earlier discussions on the project and how to formulate the ownership, management, operational structure for the new sewer system. So I wanted to, just for context, help everybody see sort of where we're at that transitional stage, because a lot of work over the last year is culminating in this transition, bringing on Cable Houston to help the board really dive in to understanding the decisions moving forward, right? And not everybody, well, it's hard to sometimes see everything that, the territory you've covered as you come to a milestone. So that's really all I wanted to do, was take a couple of minutes and talk about the ground that we have covered and everything that the board now has that the board did not have a year ago. Right? So on the system planning side, we now know with a reasonable amount of certainty where the Mill City Gates water pollution control facility, that's the treatment plant, where it's going to be located. Is it set in stone? No, but we're pretty confident we know where that's going to be, right? We've had the conversations with the property owners of that property. It looks like we're headed towards an amenable agreement on an acquisition of the properties. So that big unknown, that's been clarified. Number two, we now know with a reasonable amount of certainty the alignment for the interconnect pipeline between Mill City and Gates, something we did not know a year ago. Gates collection system. So we have a footprint. It's in the facilities plan that Keller is finalizing now. We have a map of a collection system for the city of Gates, so we know what that footprint looks like, about where lift stations need to be, those kinds of things. And we also know where what time of improvements need to be made to the Mill City collection system to tie all this together, right? We really didn't know that a year ago. It was a concept in the master plan from a couple years ago, but now we've got pretty good certainty there. We also understand the feasibility of permitting the system as it's conceptualized in the facilities plan that Keller's finalizing. Is it a risk-free permitting process? Nope. Still have to work the process with DEQ, but we know that it's a feasible permitting process with just one or two things that we've got to work out with DEQ, but DEQ now understands the site plan, the analysis that the engineering team has done on groundwater transport and all of that. All that information's been submitted to DEQ just within the last 2 weeks. So we've set our stake in the ground in terms of the permitting process that the rest of the project needs to go through to get to the finish line, right? On the operations side, all right, I'm not sure if everybody realizes it, but we've got a pretty good grasp now on the personnel resources, what it's going to take to operate the Mill City Gates wastewater treatment plant. We also know with a reasonable amount of certainty what the operational demands are going to be. So what does it take to run this sort of thing in terms of personnel? And actually, that's where the counties now. I haven't really made this pitch to the entire board here, but I think we're in a position where if NISA and whichever entity ends up operating the treatment plant, I do think that Marion County will be able to offer to step in and operate the plant on NISA's behalf. Still work to do there, but I do think that is if that's something that NISA and whichever entity operates the plant decides that it's in this group's best interest or Mill City's best interest or Gates' best interest, I think the county is ready to step up and make that happen. So you've got, for the reason of certainty, you've got that in your back pocket. If the cities or NSSA aren't prepared to operate, I actually think there's a couple of, there's an economy of scale and the ability to operate the plant without the city or NSSA having to employ full-time employees for a job that's a part-time per week kind of a job. Right? And then we also have a really good bead on what the operation and maintenance costs for the system will be. In fact, Peter, if it were if our order was switched, Peter would have and Pam would have talked about that before I got to this point. But we've got a pretty good idea. That's pretty certain. All of this stuff was pretty speculative a year ago, right? Finally, on the financial modeling side, we now know what gap we have in initial capitalization it's going to take to get this system built. And you have Marion County setting the stage for a successful, what we're hoping is going to be a successful short session with the legislature to get the last of that gap funding all put together, right? So, so we have certainty there, and by the end of March, we should know for certain whether we have that funding coming or we still have something that we have to, work on in terms of funding gap for initial capitalization. You have seen models that that FCS has put together that gives you a pretty good sense of what the customer cost burden is going to be for the system, right? Within a range. Yeah, where we land on that range is going to be defined in large part by the next couple of months working with Cable Houston, right? But the last thing I want to point out is probably the most important thing that you have in your hands that you didn't have before is a predictive financial model. So if NISA says, hey, we want to understand the cost ramifications of going down this path, that model is built, right? We can change the assumptions and pump out what the results would be. So you're not flying blind. When you're going through this work with Cable Houston, we're going to be riding right along with you, filling in the technical gaps so that this board can, you can have some confidence that you're making decisions, understanding what the financial ramifications of the decisions are, right? So this is why I wanted to have Cable Houston here, because they may not know that all these pieces exist, but we have been working for the last year to get to this crossroads so that all the pieces are here, and now this board can really start to do its work, which is decide what structure is in the best interests, what's feasible for the, feasible for NISA, feasible for the communities, what's the best overall approach. So I don't have a whole lot of new information, but I did want to point out just the things you have in your pocket now that you didn't have before. I'm hoping to build up your sense of confidence, like, okay, yeah, we're equipped to actually run the gauntlet now, right? Because over the last year, there's been some angst and worry, come along the way because we didn't know what we didn't know. We know a lot of that miscellaneous stuff. A lot of big pieces are in place. So you're ready to go ahead and do the important work over the next few months. So
the last 6 years of everything we've been working on has come to a point right now where we're really gonna put the rubber to the road. Yes, okay.
Yep.
Nice. Thank you. Anything else you'd like to share?
Any questions for me that I can answer?
Would it be beneficial then that Cable Houston start off with the two scenarios, one with Marion County being the operator, one with us being the operator? Would that be useful at all?
I don't think it makes a whole lot of difference in the formulation of just the legal structure, because if Marion County's role would simply be as a contract service provider, whether that's a contract to Mill City or a contract to NSSA, right? So I don't think, I don't think it's very consequential. Yeah, whether NISA decides to utilize Marion County or go some other route. Those costs, the operating costs, what we'll do is they'll have an impact on operating costs potentially, but I don't think it has any impact on the.
And I see where you're going with that, because the person that we need to hire to have all the proper certificates is not somebody that we need to have on site 100% of the time. Thus the part-time versus the full-time, where Marion County already employs the folks with all these operation certificates. Right, so it's some sort of a model where we have Marion County as a partner, a contract partner operating and doing oversight of the project, keeps us from having to employ a six-figure salaried person. Yeah, so they could save us a ton of money. Is what I'm seeing. But the devil's in the details. That's why we got our attorneys on board. Right. So no, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Peter, welcome aboard. Thank you very much.
Ann was set to give this presentation, but she had a limited time.
Because you've got unlimited time? Is that what it is?
That was a setup, is that what I'm hearing?
If you guys
I actually don't have a color copy, but I do have a copy.
they're there. So,
Could you give me one? Okay, so this is all yours.
all right.
Have fun, dude.
So we were asked to put together an overview presentation on the operation and maintenance costs. You know, so that what's going into those costs that we had been working with Sladen, that we provided to Gordon, that we've been talking about. You know, so what are the assumptions, and you know what's needed there. So that's what we're here. And do I just click to go to the next one?
Actually, just gonna have.
There we go. Hey, so what are the two main costs that go into wastewater treatment facilities? You have your capital costs. So what is it going to take to build the facility and then build major improvements? And then the second one with any facility improvement is what's your operation and maintenance. And I thought it was important also to throw replacement costs. It's one thing that is often not accounted for as you plan for the future. At some point, it's brand new, it's sparkly, it's nice. You're gonna have to replace parts, whether they're small parts, pumps, or bigger portions of the facility. And the better you can plan for that, the better you're gonna set up the organization. Why is it operation and maintenance important? One of the biggest issues we see doing master plans and facilities plans for, you know, small agencies, you know, whether they're cities or sewer, water districts, so on and so forth, is deferred maintenance. It is a classic. It's not unique to one entity. Many agencies struggle with it, but that proper O&M is critical to making sure the facility, one, is operating safely and efficiently. You're protecting your operators, people that are working on it, that they're not, you know, there's, you know, safety involved with that. The efficiency of how your equipment's operating, your utility bills, they're affected by how well you operate and maintain those. And then very important as well as being in compliance with your government regulatory agencies. So for this one specifically, DEQ. In addition, you're looking at, as I've mentioned, lowering the overall operating costs, reducing equipment downtime, and preventing excessive wear and tear. So you have catastrophic or sudden failures that then take the entire system down potentially. And then you're trying to prolong the life of the asset. So that operation and maintenance makes it so that that piece of equipment will last longer and therefore be a longer or a smaller life cycle cost for the system. So what goes into the operation maintenance budget that we had put together? So this is, I like the pie chart. Good visual. Biggest one is personnel and training. again, not unique to this, to the system that we're proposing at putting together here. That personnel and training is the largest cost associated with that. The other ones, utility expenses, you've got your electricity is probably one of the biggest utility expenses that you're going to have to operate the pumps and the blowers and everything that goes into the facility. It's a significant expense. Chemicals, materials, and supplies. So you're going to have to add chemicals to the process in order to operate efficiently and make it function appropriately, whether it's your solids or whether it's the denitrification process, the sand filters. Solids disposal and tipping fees, you got to take those solids somewhere, and they don't take it for free. It's pretty basic concept there. You got to take it to the landfill and dispose of it, and that costs money. Maintenance and replacement parts. So as I mentioned, if you're replacing the small stuff, the big stuff gets replaced a lot later, and it operates and functions, and it's not a headache. So your staff, operating staff, aren't constantly fixing it if you fund it appropriately for that maintenance and the replacement parts. Regulatory compliance, that's working with your fees for your permits and everything associated there, your lab fees, so on and so forth. So you have to prove every month you're sending reports to the DEQ to show that what you're discharging is appropriate and meets with the permit. Administration, engineering, and consultants. So those, all your billing, your invoicing, everything that goes with that. And there's a fair amount of that. And so what we had looked at is we talked with the city of Mill City for a number of these items to see what they're doing for their current system, and then adjusting that to fit for what the expansion would look like, whether it's additional effort for regulatory compliance, the additional personnel and training, so on and so forth. Specifically, classification, we mentioned that, Brian mentioned that already, talking about the county potentially stepping in to help operate. That classification is a critical component of your certification as a facility and your permit in the facility. What the key thing, I'm not going to read through all these, every single word on here, but the DEQ has a specific system of rating the treatment system, as well as there's a treatment system classification and a collection system classification. So your operators have both collection and or treatment classifications. And currently, Russ here at the Mill City is class 1 for treatment. Your existing system for Mill City is a pretty basic type of treatment. It's efficient and it does exactly what it's needed to for a long time. It's exactly what it needed to be. But as we look at the design with this mechanical treatment plant, there's a lot more as we look to dispose and the adjustments over the years with permitting and the requirements and everything going into that. The facility, as you can see, it rated really pretty close in between 2 and 3. So what we put it at 3 because of that tertiary treatment that's going to be required for that denitrification process to protect the groundwater. That adds additional complication or complexity to the system and how it's operated, and it's complex and needs to be have a lot more attention. So that classification goes up because of the technical requirements or the capability that's needed for that. So that's what class 3 is, what we're anticipating the treatment. It's not decided, but that's the assumption that's built into the operation and maintenance, that personnel and training component. This looks at a little bit more of how many hours. So when we say it takes a lot for the personnel and training, all that component there, what does that mean? So we use industry standards that are established and used to assume how many hours it would take for that year to be able to operate and maintain different components and different units in the treatment process. As you can see, the secondary treatment is the most. That's that SBR, the sequence batch reactor system. And then the next one would be that effluent disposal. So that whole process of operating, maintaining, and working with the rapid infiltration basins. What this equivalates to is 1.78 FTE. So a lot of people think in the FTE, which is full-time equivalent for personnel. And so that's what we're using based on, again, regional and everything, looking at how much does it cost to have an operator, how much, for both their training, their overhead and benefits and everything that goes into that. So that it works into that number as far as the personnel and training. And that's the end of those assumptions, but maybe the key takeaways I would say is I wanted to provide that information. What's the basis? What are those assumptions that have gone into the operation and maintenance? And also how critical it is as we're looking at the permitting process, we need to show we're planning for this. We need to provide confidence to the regulatory agency that we know what we're doing and we're going to plan for it, and we're going to appropriately staff the treatment plant. And I say we, the board, the owning, the operating agency is going to appropriately staff the treatment plant so that it will be able to be compliant as you move forward with your permit. There's stiff penalties and problems if you don't meet those, permit requirements. So the DEQ is going to want to know, how are you going to meet that? Are you planning appropriately with your budgets so that you can do that? It's a little more difficult with a new system like that. And I say new, even though Mill City has an existing system. This pretty big leap technology, pretty big leap in how the system is going to operate. So it's a new system that you're going to have to tackle. Any questions?
Was that 1.7 FTEs?
Yeah, 1.78. Yeah, we get exact and then we pull back a little bit. But
We can't hear Ron.
Louder.
Sorry, I was saying that FCS and their analysis have been using some numbers that Keller's given them on O&M cost earlier, and I was just wondering what the basis, based on this, what the assumptions were to get to that cost.
I can provide you this table. We should have put it in the presentation, but it's got basically the same breakdown in the pie chart. And obviously you can't read this, but it sums up to 550,000. Yep, and that personnel and personnel. Correct. That is not upper basin. I mean, we did some assumptions about that one as well as we were looking in the early process there. Yeah, I think we can provide that. So, is that okay?
It's not tracking how we went.
He was assuming it was 750. He wasn't sure about the number. I was saying the number is 550.
Yeah, bring that down.
May have been an iteration.
Yeah, yeah. So I think you put a high number up there first, so we feel better when you drop something.
550 is the total, the whole pie chart. All the components is 550.
We have a couple of questions here from Marion County. We'll start with the director since he outranked his already, Chris.
Here, will you remind us the number you just quoted? Does that include, that's just for operation of plants? Does it include maintenance of the collection system as well as that number?
It does. It does.
Right, Chris.
Yep.
I was going to ask the exact same clarifying question. I also wanted to ask just very quickly the FTE amount. That is just for the plant operations, correct? Because just for the
So the dollar number you stated was for collections and plant, but this FTE.
I believe, let me double check that. That's a fair question. Let me double check that and make sure, because that may be where that 750 comes in. And so I want to make sure I'm not misquoting. So I appreciate the question. So.
Good question. Thank you.
Yeah.
So board members out there in Zoom world, I can't see your faces. I can't see if you're looking to ask any questions. So I'm going to turn it over and ask you if you have any questions. Anything for Peter here? If nothing, then
Oh, Denny.
we have Denny have a question. I can't see. I have an answer.
Denny, do you have a question? No. Okay, thank you.
Brian, do you have another question or?
Well, I was just curious if Scott was still on the meeting with you.
I don't know.
I didn't see Scott.
He was here. You might have.
He might have, yeah.
Okay.
Can I take a question?
Oh, no, I was just gonna ask him to turn his camera on. I was gonna compliment him on being the spitting image of Tom Clark, who's the Appalachian State football coach. I didn't know he was headphone up and throw it on the ground.
Okay, very good.
Let me go back to the Zoom
Okay.
and stop sharing.
So do we have any more questions for Peter while he's up here in the hot seat? Anybody?
And I'm not texting. Give the answer that I could provide as soon as.
Okay, so what am I doing wrong here?
I don't know.
I don't know either.
Are we at the point yet where we can have a detailed task list and like sort of project that?
Want to say that one more time so it can be heard?
I should ask Peter if he's at the point yet where you could give us a detailed task list timeline for the project. I think we're kind of discussing here, what we know in the prison. Closing on that point when we're talking to see how those are it's going to determine the detail. Not there yet.
Okay. Well, that pretty much covers what we have on the agenda, but I'd like to also have a little bit of discussion on some of the communication like that has to do with a little bit of what Peter just presented too. Laura was asked a question by a member of the press about our fee structure, where our fees might be going. And it's like, we don't know yet exactly. That's why we have a consultant on board, and we didn't know even what the consultant didn't know what Peter and Brian just disclosed to us today yet. So we're still working on that. But it's my recollection that we had set up for a communications person on our board. And I think, isn't that still you, Denny? Should questions like that go to you? But I mean, it went to Laura. Obviously, if somebody in the press is wanting to figure something out, and another reason we need to discuss that is because someone from the press looking at some of the past, I want to say, minutes of our meetings, pulled $100 a month figure out of one of the presentations that Gordon gave to us. Now was one of his examples of which way it could go if we went down a certain road. And it was nothing to do with an actual figure of where our fees are going to be. But we got to make sure that kind of misinformation doesn't get out there in the press, because that's not good. And I'm adamant that we won't do something to double our sewer bills. That's why Marion County is working so hard at getting the full plant paid for. But I need to know, we need to figure out for sure and reiterate what it is we do when we get questions like that, so that we have a one voice for one board coming forward. And you know, does Laura have the opera where the blessings of the board to answer questions like that, or do we have to wait to answer any question from the press? But we'll have it coming to the board of directors. So I'm asking this of you board members to help give us some direction and discussion on that. Anybody have any thoughts on that?
Mr. Chair.
Denny? Yes.
Well, I've been answering questions for the couple of years as in my responsibility as PR person for the board. I think Laura is far more informed and able to answer those questions generally, especially if this evolves forward in a way that doesn't involve the Upper Canyon to a level that's going to, you know, keep our interest at a high level until we figure out what's going to happen in Detroit and Idana. So I would advocate for Laura Conroy having that authority.
I like the fact that Laura should be the focal point of this, but I think that I would like her to speak with a couple of the board members on most of the points. You know, there are some things that would probably be easy to answer, but things like that, whether she goes to the chair and the vice chair or the chair and one of the others as well, that would be good. And I just want to make sure that that we don't split up as a board just yet either, too. So we don't want to, you know, say, I know that there's a lot of angst between, you know, we're just focusing on the Mill City when so much needs to be done in Detroit. And I've referred to those just as the two systems, but I want to make sure that we're not heading down a road where we're gonna split up, because I still want to say that I'm committed to the Upper Canyon as well.
Well, and
so
Mr. Chair, Denny speaking.
Yes.
I have a little different view. I don't think there's any angst at all. I think we're all realists and fairly pragmatic about the approach to this. I think the big issues we have is keeping folks like Gordon Wilson, who does a great job with his predictive models, away from public meetings, because I can see how anybody, especially meeting before last, if they had sat in or just read what was heard what was recorded or read what we had in the minutes, could have created an awful lot of concern on the part of our residents. I think his material is worthwhile at some point. I'm not sure which point. I spoke with him at length a couple of 3 days ago regarding the data request that he put out. And it turns out that a lot of those questions weren't well formed. They weren't really offering much clarity to anything that he was trying to evaluate and predict for our future. So I would just think that we need relatively little of that kind of information in a public space, because it's not that we're trying to hide anything. It's simply that it's easily misunderstood and can create conflict for us going forward.
And I agree. And what I gathered from reading that story, in my opinion, was that it was gathered from several meetings, not just one particular meeting that was listened to or watched. I kind of got the idea that the information was piecemealed together into that, but that was just my impression.
Right. So actually, this is quite actually an opportunity I see for Laura to speak with the press to this, so that we might get a little bit better a better idea of, he might get a better idea of what's going on out there or here in the real world. The fact that we do remain very committed to keep these rates affordable for our communities. So that's one thing that I want to make sure that goes forward with the press releases, not a presumptive a kind of overview of what we talked about with only the mention of a high end and none of the low end kind of figures that we threw around. So, okay, so I think we're in agreement then that Laura is the good focal point for the press, and possibly though, we appreciate you reaching out to a couple of board members to get their thoughts on it, if that's applicable. Pretty vague, huh? Go ahead.
Is it also possible that when they reach out, they have it's apprised those discussions?
Breaking up.
So Emily wants to make sure that when the press does reach out to Laura, that the board is aware of what she's speaking to them about, so that we know in case somebody comes and asks us questions, obviously afterwards and stuff. Yeah, that's very important. That way we're all on the same page, on the same subject. Yes. Go ahead, Laura.
I think you were looking for a response, so I'll provide one, which was, thank you so much for bringing that up. As part of good practice, I would absolutely reach out to the chair and vice chair, in part because as elected officials, you are the face and the voice of this organization. And I'm a civil servant and happy to serve, but you are the elected officials. You are the people that are in your communities, and certainly need to know what your community is asking and what the conversation is about. So I would reach out to your chair and vice chair, or whoever you had designated, if it had been Denny or others, about that. The other thing is, as a best practice would be to let you know when press has contacted us and what our response has been, so that when your community members and constituents ask you questions, you're informed and you're aware that press has reached out. You're aware of what the response has been, so that you can provide additional information as needed. I will also offer that you've heard us say before, the county is working to get a communications and PR firm under contract to assist. That firm will be helpful in creating talking points, including what was mentioned here tonight, or once before you had mentioned, Commissioner Schofield, about talking points from the county. As Scott would say, as this gets real, people are going to have more questions as they start to see large pieces of equipment out there, as they start to hear reports to the board. They're going to have more questions, and having that PR firm on board to help us distill what our experts are telling us into helpful information for the community will be helpful. I remember one of the first things we did is I had the engineers explain, what's a force main? Oh, it's a sewer pipe. Oh, okay. Right. Just a little bit of translation there will be helpful. So that will be my practice, working with leadership and then all of you. Yeah.
Next thing that I wanted to mention was that I was approached by a constituent about that topic, specifically Camp Benadoo and Gates, that the property owner there had been talking to their residents that each resident that is connected to city sewer would be charged $100 to their bill. And so they're getting the group together to vote no on this project. So when I heard that, I was like, well, I don't know specifically that each resident would be billed, you know, or if it's being billed to the campground. And so of course I didn't have anything to say to respond to it. You know, I was like, that's not the number that I heard, but you know, I can get some more information. So as residents are also asking, it would be really great to know too.
$100 cheap, if there was a charge.
Each trailer spot, yeah, that's what they're being told, and so they're all prepared to vote no, so they're not being charged an additional $100.
Well, that brings me a question, Peter, really quick. I'm sorry. With the type of system we're putting in, I know with our system, we do not want RVs
dumping into our sewer system. It will cause issues with the way our system works. Is that also going to be an issue with this, is having that RV with the, what is it, rid and whatever else it is they put into their system? Is that going to cause us problems with the new plant?
And overload at any point can be problematic.
I'm talking about the chemicals primarily.
I don't know specifically about that. Here.
Okay.
Obviously, other systems have RV parks and stuff that are hooked up to them. Are those RV parks problematic? Does every RV space have its own hookup? Because this RV park is a semi-permanent residence, actually. So it's up in Gates. There's how many in there right now? 28.
Not the one behind the Sierra.
Yeah.
Oh, there's only 28 there?
It looks like more.
There's a lot more than 28 there. No, really?
Yes, I got the map.
But my first response is no, $100 is not what we're looking for, because every residence, every hookup then would have to be that, and we are fighting hard to keep a very low rate, low to moderate income. We're not too looking to do something like that that would be unaffordable, and we realize that. And Marion County's working hard for us, as well as Keller and Associates, obviously too. I would be adamantly opposed to a system that costs that much money, because that's my rate doubling too, and I don't see that.
Have you had any experience with things like trailer parks, or they prorate that, or their method?
I can't speak to everything because there's various ways to do it. Like most everything, there's different ways to handle that. What we would look at is it's not, we look at it as equivalent dwelling, right? If you have 28 RVs, it's not one EDU, not one equivalent dwelling. So it has a much higher impact on the system, so that it, it's going to have to pay its fair share.
Yeah, it would be more than a single, but not 28 total.
How that gets worked out, and those are details to be worked out.
So we don't know.
Yeah.
But it will be,
There will be a huge protest, and I will be at the beginning of that line.
I guess my response to them would be, we don't have exact numbers yet, but I would be adamantly opposed to it as well. Obviously, I think whoever came up with $100 didn't read the whole article. They just saw one number, and the $100 was based on projections on all sorts of things, and a big portion of that is not being fully funded, but that was also with Detroit and Idana's system, and the low numbers of people coming in on that portion of it as well. So I think they saw a little thing in that one Canyon Weekly press release that got put out, and that's how misinformation gets started, and somebody's going around trying to start something or end something without having all the facts.
Possibly the situation where the idea of voting sort of went by the wayside. That happened sometime.
Yeah. This person who you named, I'm not aware of them coming and asking us any questions. I'm not aware of them asking anybody that knows anything any questions. Yeah. My first question to them is, where did you get your information? Yeah, so because they are obviously how the rumor mill gets started, I don't know, but it sure spins fast, right? So that's the kind of misinformation that we need to be sure that we are able to counteract as quickly as possible, and stuff like that, because yeah, that's hard on all of us. Questions? Comments? We're nearing the end of our agenda. We have something? Who? Ken? Did you have your hand up? What's going on?
A couple of times. I agree with Denny on Gordon. Gordon's from Olympia area, up in Seattle area, and doesn't know anything about the canyon and the people in the canyon and their situations. So thank you, Laura, for stepping up to the plate and taking on the press. Believe it or not, $100 is cheap. We were thinking in the beginning of $1,000, but as everybody has just pointed out, that's not going to happen. And also,
what?
that $100 for O&M costs, for setting up O&M and starting to set things up for $1,000 to hook up to a sewer system or $100 to hook up to a sewer system. That was talked about in the beginning.
Oh, I think Emily was talking about $100 a month sewer bill.
Was connected with that article, Jen, that came out that they took off of our meeting notes.
That was $100
audio.
That was, yes, you're correct. That was $100 a month. I'm talking about hooking up to a sewer system. So my apologies. That's where, Gordon just needs to step aside and we'll deal with our communities and Gordon, please listen. The thing about what Laura talked about, Marion County going out and hiring a PR firm, I thought it was under contract with Keller that they were supposed to do that. To set up a PR firm and get things moving. So I have questions on that. Why is Marion County paying for it?
I think you were asking a question and I could be speaking with better clarity. So the PR firm is a sub of Keller's.
Oh. Thank you.
Peter's not the guy for the job on that.
Sorry about that. Sorry, Ken.
Come on, come out here and knock on doors, Peter. I dare you.
It is part of Keller's contract.
So yeah, so it's not a correction. Marion County's not the one doing it. It is Keller that's doing the subcontracting on that, or contracting it out.
Good. Thank you.
Okay. Okay. Like I say, we're getting to the end of our agenda. Any discussions on anything that we covered here tonight? Anything that came to anybody's minds? Something that we need to add for the good of the communities, the good of the board?
Yeah,
if not,
we need 50 million for the Upper Canyon.
Call that deal. I've already told him I want 15. I think I told him we needed 15 to 20 down here, and I told him we needed about 100 for up the canyon, and he said he's working on it.
So
understand
any opportunity you get to speak with one of your legislators, you always put that bug in their ear. So.
And Ed needs to hear it from more than just me.
I found that a little difficult at that gathering. I wasn't going to interrupt and be rude.
Well, I was, and I told him I was going to be when I got there.
Good for you. Okay, well, I think, they're willing to have coffees or whatever if somebody wants to come and just chat with them. I've done it many times, and they're all very receptive. It doesn't always bear fruit, but at least plants the seed, right? So any opportunity you get to speak with your legislator, go ahead and sit down and do it. With that, unless anybody has anything else that they'd like to bring before the board, we're going to go ahead and adjourn tonight's meeting. Thank you, everyone, for showing up.
Enjoy your Thanksgiving.